It's funny how life can change in a blink. One minute, you're blissfully unaware, and the next, everything you thought you knew is turned upside down. I'm a 33-year-old photographer, and I guess you could say I've always seen the world through a different lens. My partner, Laura, and I have been together for 8 years. We met at an art gallery opening, both captivated by the same piece, a haunting black and white photo of a desolate landscape. That night, we ended up talking until the early hours, finding a connection that felt effortless and profound. Laura is a force of nature. As an event planner, she's always in motion, juggling countless tasks with a smile that lights up any room. She's the kind of person who makes you believe that anything is possible. I was drawn to her energy, her passion, and the way she seemed to effortlessly glide through life. For years, we were inseparable, sharing dreams and building a life that felt like an adventure. We adopted Max, our rescue dog, 2 years into our relationship. He was this scruffy little mutt with a heart of gold, and he quickly became the center of our world. Our apartment was filled with laughter, late-night conversations, and the kind of intimacy that comes from truly knowing and accepting someone. I loved Laura with everything I had, and I thought she felt the same. Photography has always been my escape, my way of capturing the beauty and complexity of the world around me. But beyond that, I have a deep passion for collecting rare vinyl records. There's something magical about the crackle of a needle on vinyl, the way music can transport you to another time and place. Laura would often tease me about my ever-growing collection, but she understood how much it meant to me. Looking back, I see now that I was living in a bubble, blissfully unaware of the storm that was brewing just beneath the surface. Life was good. No, it was great. We had our quirks and our disagreements, like any couple, but I never doubted our love. Not until everything changed. Not until I overheard that conversation that shattered my world. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about love, trust, and the fragile nature of happiness. It's about how one moment can redefine everything you thought you knew. And it's about finding the strength to pick up the pieces and move forward, even when it feels impossible. So, let me take you back to the beginning, to a time when I believed in forever. Laura and I quickly settled into a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. Our early days were filled with exploration and discovery, both of each other and the world around us. We spent weekends hiking through the nearby hills, armed with my camera and a packed lunch. Laura loved organizing impromptu picnics, each one a mini adventure that felt spontaneous and exciting. One of our favorite activities was wandering through the city, discovering hidden gems like quaint coffee shops and offbeat art galleries. Laura had an eye for detail, always finding beauty in the mundane. She'd point out a particularly interesting shadow cast by a street lamp or a vibrant mural tucked away in an alley. Her enthusiasm was infectious, making even the most ordinary days feel extraordinary. Our relationship was built on shared experiences and mutual support. When Laura landed a major client for her event planning business, we celebrated with champagne and a night out dancing. When I held my first solo photography exhibition, she was there, beaming with pride and cheering me on. We were each other's biggest fans, pushing one another to reach new heights. The adoption of Max brought a new dimension to our lives. This scruffy little mutt, with his big brown eyes and wagging tail, quickly became our furry child. He had a knack for getting into trouble, whether it was digging up Laura's meticulously planted garden or chewing on my favorite pair of shoes. But we loved him unconditionally, and he became the glue that held us together during tougher times. Our intimacy deepened with each passing year. We developed a language of our own, a series of inside jokes and unspoken understandings that only we could decode. Laura had a habit of leaving little notes for me to find, tucked into my camera bag, slipped under my pillow, or stuck to the bathroom mirror. They were small gestures, but they meant the world to me. Life was busy, but we always made time for each other. Friday nights were reserved for us time. We'd cook dinner together, dance around the kitchen to our favorite records, and collapse on the couch with Max nestled between us. Those evenings were a sanctuary, a reminder of why we fell in love in the first place. We traveled whenever we could, exploring new places and creating memories that would last a lifetime. One of our most memorable trips was a road trip across the Southwest. We visited national parks, marveled at the Grand Canyon, and slept under a blanket of stars in the desert. It was on that trip that we talked about our future, dreams of a house with a big backyard for Max, maybe even starting a family someday. Looking back, those were some of the happiest times of my life. We were a team, navigating the ups and downs of life with a sense of togetherness that felt unbreakable. Laura's laugh, her touch, the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't watching. These were the moments that made everything else fade away. But as the years passed, subtle changes began to creep in. Laura's work demanded more of her time and energy. Late nights at the office became more frequent, and our once spontaneous adventures started to feel like rare treats. I noticed, but I didn't want to believe it was anything more than the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. It wasn't until that fateful day, when I overheard her conversation, that I realized just how fragile our happiness was. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. For now, let me hold on to these memories a little longer, before everything fell apart. It's amazing how easily we can ignore the signs when we don't want to see them. Laura's phone habits changed subtly at first. She started receiving more texts and calls, often stepping out of the room to answer them. She'd tell me it was work, a demanding client, or an emergency she had to handle. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? We had built our relationship on trust and honesty, or so I thought. Then there were the late nights. Laura's job as an event planner was always demanding, but it seemed like she was working more than ever. She'd come home exhausted, sometimes well past midnight, with barely enough energy to eat dinner before collapsing into bed. I'd stay up, worried, waiting for her to come through the door, trying to mask my concern with supportive words and warm meals. Max sensed it too. Our loyal dog, usually so in tune with our emotions, became restless when Laura wasn't home. He'd sit by the door, ears perked, waiting for the sound of her keys. When she finally walked in, his excitement was tempered by her exhaustion. I tried to tell myself that it was just a busy period, that things would go back to normal soon. But deep down, a nagging doubt began to take root. There were other changes too, small, almost imperceptible shifts in her behavior. She became more distant, lost in her thoughts even when we were together. Our conversations, once filled with laughter and shared dreams, grew more strained. She'd brush off my questions with vague answers, leaving me feeling more disconnected than ever. One evening, I suggested we take a weekend trip, just the two of us and Max, to reconnect and escape the stress of our daily lives. Laura hesitated, her eyes darting to her phone before she reluctantly agreed. But the trip never happened. A last-minute work emergency came up, and she had to cancel. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, but I didn't push it. I didn't want to be the jealous, paranoid partner. The final straw came on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Laura was in the kitchen, cooking dinner, while I lounged on the couch with Max. Her phone buzzed on the counter, and out of habit, I glanced at the screen. It was a text from someone named Sam, a name I didn't recognize. Before I could read more, Laura snatched the phone and excused herself to the bedroom. My heart sank, and the doubts I had been suppressing came flooding back. That night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. Laura was already out cold, her breathing steady and calm, while my mind raced with questions. Who was Sam? Why was she so secretive about her phone? I replayed the past few months in my head, trying to piece together the fragments of my suspicions. It was then that I started noticing the little things I had overlooked. The way she smiled at her phone, the hurried goodbyes when a call came in, the scent of unfamiliar cologne on her clothes. Each detail was a puzzle piece, slowly forming a picture I didn't want to see. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but a part of me was terrified of what I might find. What if I was wrong? What if my suspicions were unfounded and I was just being paranoid? But the other part of me, the part that felt the growing distance between us, knew that something had to give. I decided to wait, to gather more information before making any accusations. But as the days passed, the weight of my suspicions grew heavier. I was living in a state of constant anxiety, torn between wanting to know the truth and fearing the consequences. And then, the truth came crashing down on me in a way I never expected. But that's a story for another page. For now, let me hold on to the person I thought Laura was, the life I believed we had, before everything unraveled. It was a typical Wednesday evening, one of those rare nights when Laura managed to come home early. I was in the living room, sorting through my vinyl collection, while she was in the kitchen preparing dinner. Max was curled up at my feet, content and peaceful. It was one of those moments that felt almost normal, a fleeting echo of our past happiness. Laura's phone, as usual, was never far from her side. She had placed it on the kitchen counter, and every so often, it would buzz with a new message or notification. I tried to ignore it, focusing instead on the comforting ritual of organizing my records. Music had always been my escape, a way to lose myself in a world of rhythm and melody, far removed from my growing worries. But then it happened. Laura stepped out of the kitchen to grab something from the bedroom, leaving her phone unattended. I didn't mean to snoop, but when the phone buzzed again, the screen lit up with a new message from Sam. My heart raced as I glanced over, the words on the screen feeling like a punch to the gut. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing. The message was innocent enough, but the implications were anything but. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I tried to process what I had just read. My mind raced with 1,000 questions, each one more painful than the last. Who was Sam? How long had this been going on? Why hadn't I seen the signs sooner? Before I could dwell on it any longer, I heard Laura's footsteps approaching. I quickly looked away, my heart pounding in my chest. She entered the room, her face lighting up with a smile that now felt like a mask, hiding a truth I wasn't ready to face. I tried to act normal, but I knew she could sense something was off. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, her voice laced with concern.
"Yeah, infine," he replied, forcing a smile.
"Just tired, I guess." Dinner was a blur. I barely tasted the food, my mind consumed by the message I had seen. Laura chatted about her day, filling the silence with stories and laughter that felt increasingly hollow. I nodded along, pretending to listen, while my thoughts spiraled into a dark abyss. That night, after Laura had fallen asleep, I lay awake in bed, the weight of my discovery pressing down on me. I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. I needed answers, but I also needed to protect myself from the devastating truth I feared was waiting for me. The next day, I decided to follow her. It felt wrong, invasive, but I was desperate. I needed to know who this Sam was and what they meant to Laura. I left work early, making up an excuse about feeling unwell, and drove to Laura's office. I parked a few blocks away, close enough to keep an eye on her without being seen. Hours passed, each one stretching into an eternity. Finally, I saw her leave the building. She wasn't alone. Walking beside her, laughing and chatting as if they didn't have a care in the world, was a tall, dark-haired man I had never seen before.
"Sam."
I followed them at a distance, my heart pounding with every step. They made their way to a small cafe, tucked away on a quiet street. I watched from across the road as they settled into a corner booth, their heads close together, their hands occasionally brushing. The intimacy between them was undeniable. I couldn't take it anymore. I felt like my world was crumbling around me, the foundation of my life shattered by this betrayal. I turned and walked away, my mind numb, my heart aching. The truth was out, and there was no going back. Laura was cheating on me, and I had no idea what to do next. As I drove home, my thoughts were a chaotic jumble of anger, sadness, and disbelief. How could she do this to me? To us? The life we had built together now felt like a lie, and I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered heart. But before I could confront Laura, before I could demand answers, I needed time to process everything. I needed to gather my thoughts and find the strength to face the woman I loved, who had become a stranger overnight. The days following my discovery were a blur of emotions. I felt like I was on an endless roller coaster, swinging from anger to sorrow, from confusion to numbness. It was hard to focus on anything. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Laura and Sam together, their laughter and intimacy haunting my thoughts. I couldn't bring myself to confront Laura right away. Each time I looked at her, my chest tightened with a mixture of love and betrayal. How could she do this to me? To us? I spent hours replaying our relationship in my mind, searching for clues I might have missed. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the sudden distance. It all made sense now, but it didn't make it hurt any less. Laura seemed oblivious to my internal turmoil. She went about her days as if nothing had changed, her laughter and smiles now feeling like cruel reminders of the facade she had maintained. I began to withdraw, spending more time in my studio, immersing myself in my photography and my vinyl records. Music became my refuge, each song a temporary escape from the harsh reality of my situation. One night, after Laura had gone to bed, I found myself sitting on the floor of my studio, surrounded by stacks of records. Max lay beside me, his head resting on my leg, offering silent comfort. I picked up an album, one of my favorites, and gently placed it on the turntable. The familiar crackle of the vinyl filled the room, followed by the soothing melody of a song that had always brought me peace. As the music played, tears welled up in my eyes. I hadn't cried since discovering the affair, holding everything inside as if keeping it bottled up would somehow make it less real. But now, in the quiet of my studio, with Max by my side and the music enveloping me, I finally let go. The tears flowed freely, each one a release of the pain and betrayal I had been carrying. I thought about the years we had spent together, the dreams we had shared, and the life we had built. How had it all come to this? I felt like a fool for not seeing the signs sooner, for trusting her so completely. But more than that, I felt a profound sense of loss. The woman I loved, the future I had envisioned, the happiness I had cherished. It all felt like it had been ripped away from me in an instant. The next morning, I woke up feeling hollow, the emotional storm of the previous night leaving me drained. I knew I couldn't keep this up, couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I needed to talk to someone, to share my burden before it consumed me. My best friend, Josh, was the first person who came to mind. He had always been there for me, a steady presence through all the ups and downs. I called Josh and asked if we could meet. Hearing the tremor in my voice, he agreed without hesitation. We met at our usual spot, a small coffee shop that had been a sanctuary for us over the years. As soon as I saw him, the facade I had been maintaining crumbled. I told him everything, from the suspicions to the discovery, to the emotional turmoil that had been eating away at me. Josh listened patiently, his face a mix of concern and empathy. When I finished, he leaned forward and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to go through this alone," he said. "I'm here for you, whatever you need." His words brought a measure of comfort, but they also highlighted the enormity of what I was facing. I realized that I needed more than just a friend's support. I needed to confront Laura, to demand answers and decide what came next. But I also knew that I needed to be ready for that conversation, to find the strength to face the truth head-on. Josh encouraged me to take my time, to seek professional help if I needed it. He even offered to accompany me to a therapist, knowing how daunting that first step could be. His unwavering support gave me a glimmer of hope, a reminder that I wasn't as alone as I felt. As I left the coffee shop, I knew that the road ahead would be difficult. There would be more tears, more anger, and more heartache. But I also knew that I couldn't keep running from the truth. I needed to face it, no matter how painful, and find a way to rebuild my life from the shattered pieces. The day I decided to confront Laura was one of the hardest days of my life. I had spent countless hours going over what I would say, how I would say it, but nothing could truly prepare me for the reality of the confrontation. I knew that once the words were out, there would be no going back. Our lives would be irrevocably changed. That evening, I waited for Laura to come home from work. Max seemed to sense my anxiety, staying close by and occasionally nudging me with his nose, as if to offer reassurance. I sat on the couch, staring at the door, rehearsing my lines in my head. When I finally heard the jingle of her keys and the turn of the lock, my heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. Laura walked in, a tired smile on her face. "Hey, love," she said, dropping her bag on the floor. "Long day. Can we talk?" I asked, my voice betraying the nerves I was trying to hide. She looked at me, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "Sure, what's up?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "I know about Sam," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I overheard your conversation," I replied, struggling to keep my composure. "And I saw the message. I know you've been seeing him." The color drained from her face, and she sank into the nearest chair. "I can explain," she said, her voice cracking. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it, Laura?" I demanded, my emotions bubbling to the surface. "Because it sure looks like you're having an affair." She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. "I never meant for this to happen," she said through sobs. "It started as a friendship, but it got out of hand. I didn't know how to stop it." "How long?" I asked, my voice breaking. "How long have you been lying to me?" She looked up, tears streaming down her face. 6 months, she admitted. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. 6 months of deception, 6 months of pretending. The betrayal cut deep, but there was also a part of me that wanted to understand. "Why, Laura? Why did you do this?" She shook her head, struggling to find the right words. "I don't know," she said finally. "I guess I felt like something was missing. We've been together for so long, and I love you. But, I don't know. I felt lost." Her confession left me reeling. I had always thought our relationship was strong, that we could weather any storm. But now, it felt like everything I believed in was a lie. "We could have talked about it," I said, my voice filled with pain. "We could have worked through it together." "I know," she whispered, "but I was scared. Scared of hurting you, scared of losing what we have. And now I've done both." Silence hung heavy between us, the weight of her words settling in. I didn't know what to say, how to move forward from this. The life we had built together, the future we had planned, it all seemed to crumble before my eyes. "I need time," I said finally. "Time to think, time to process. I can't just pretend everything is okay." Laura nodded, wiping her tears. "I understand," she said, her voice hollow. "Take all the time you need. I'm so sorry, more than you'll ever know." I stood up, feeling a sense of finality in the moment. "I'm going to stay with Josh for a while," I said. "I need some space." She didn't try to stop me, didn't say anything as I packed a bag and walked out the door. As I drove to Josh's place, the reality of what had happened began to sink in. I had confronted Laura, but it felt like the hardest part was still ahead. The road to healing and understanding would be long and painful, but I knew I had to face it head-on, one step at a time. Staying with Josh was a relief. His place was a sanctuary where I could escape the constant reminders of Laura and the life we had built together. The first few days were a haze of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion. I found it hard to focus on anything, my mind constantly drifting back to the confrontation and Laura's tearful confession. Josh, true to his nature, was a steady presence. He didn't press me to talk, but was always there when I needed to vent. We spent hours sitting in his living room, talking about everything and nothing. His calm demeanor and practical advice helped ground me in ways I hadn't expected. One evening, after another long day of trying to sort through my thoughts, Josh suggested something I hadn't considered. "You know, talking to a therapist might help," he said gently. "It could give you some clarity, help you process everything." At first, I was hesitant. The idea of spilling my deepest fears and insecurities to a stranger felt daunting. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I needed an objective perspective, someone who could help me navigate the storm of emotions I was drowning in. So, I made an appointment with a therapist Josh recommended. Walking into that first session, I was nervous, unsure of what to expect. But as soon as I started talking, the words flowed out of me like a flood. I told her about Laura, about Sam, about the betrayal that had shattered my world. The therapist listened patiently, offering insights and asking questions that made me think deeper about my feelings. She helped me see that while Laura's betrayal was devastating, it wasn't a reflection of my worth. We talked about the importance of self-compassion, of allowing myself to grieve the relationship I thought I had. Through these sessions, I started to reflect more on my past, trying to understand how we had arrived at this point. I remembered the financial setback I had faced years ago, a time when Laura had been my rock. We had struggled together, fighting to stay afloat, and her unwavering support had meant everything to me. It was hard to reconcile that version of Laura with the one who had betrayed me. I also thought about my own role in our relationship. Had I been too complacent, too wrapped up in my work and hobbies to notice Laura's growing dissatisfaction? The questions were painful, but they were necessary. I realized that while Laura's actions were her own, our relationship had cracks that neither of us had addressed. One night, lying in bed at Josh's place, I found myself thinking about our early years together. The hikes, the road trips, the quiet nights listening to vinyl records. Those memories felt like a different lifetime, a dream that had slipped away. But they also reminded me of the love and connection we had once shared. It wasn't all a lie, even if it felt that way now. Max, our loyal dog, was staying with Laura. I missed him terribly, his comforting presence a reminder of happier times. I knew I needed to see him, to feel that connection again. So, one weekend, I arranged to pick him up and take him for a long walk. Seeing Laura again was hard, but Max's excited bark and wagging tail brought a moment of pure joy. As we walked through the park, I let myself think about the future. What did I want? Could I ever forgive Laura? Did I even want to try? The questions were overwhelming, but I knew that rushing into a decision wouldn't help. I needed to take it one day at a time, to focus on healing and understanding myself before I could figure out what came next. The therapist helped me see that healing wasn't a linear process. There would be good days and bad days, moments of clarity and times of confusion. But each step I took, no matter how small, was a step toward finding peace. As the weeks passed, I began to feel a sense of strength returning. I reconnected with old friends, threw myself into my photography, and found solace in the familiar crackle of vinyl records. I wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. I knew that my journey was far from over. There would be more difficult conversations, more painful realizations. But I also knew that I wasn't alone. With the support of Josh, the guidance of my therapist, and my own resilience, I believed I could navigate whatever lay ahead. As more time passed, the fog of my initial shock began to lift. I was still grappling with the pain of Laura's betrayal, but I was starting to see things more clearly. The therapy sessions were helping me untangle my emotions and providing me with tools to cope. I knew that sooner or later, I'd have to make a decision about our future. One evening, after a particularly enlightening therapy session, I sat down to write. I had always found solace in putting my thoughts on paper, and this time was no different. I wrote about our relationship, the good times and the bad, and tried to understand what had led us to this point. It was a cathartic process, allowing me to confront my feelings head-on. In my writing, I reflected on the significant moments we had shared. I thought about the night we adopted Max, how we both felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility and love for this little dog who needed us. I remembered the long nights we spent planning our future, dreaming of the house we'd buy, the trips we'd take, the family we might start. But those dreams now felt distant, tainted by the reality of our situation. As much as I wanted to hold on to the past, I knew I couldn't ignore the present. Laura had cheated, and that betrayal had changed everything. Trust, once broken, is incredibly hard to rebuild. I decided to reach out to Laura and ask for a meeting. We needed to talk, to lay everything out on the table, and figure out what came next. When I called her, she sounded surprised but agreed to meet at a nearby park where we had shared many happy memories. The day of the meeting, I felt a mix of anxiety and determination. I arrived early, sitting on a bench and watching the people around me. Families playing, couples walking hand in hand, children laughing. It all felt like a cruel reminder of what I had lost. When Laura arrived, she looked nervous, her eyes red from crying. "Hi," she said softly, sitting down next to me. "Hi," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us. Finally, I spoke. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I began. "About us, about what happened, and about where we go from here." Laura nodded, her eyes fixed on the ground. "I've been thinking too," she said. "I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I wish I could take it all back." "I know," I said, my voice steady, "but we can't change the past. We can only decide what to do now. I took a deep breath, the words I had rehearsed in my mind finally coming out. I need to know why, Laura. Why did you do it? She looked up at me, tears brimming in her eyes. I wish I had a clear answer, she said. I felt lost, like I was missing something. And when I met Sam, it felt like he filled that void. But it was wrong, and I realize that now. I was selfish, and I betrayed your trust. Her honesty, though painful, was something I had been craving. I needed to understand her motivations, even if it didn't make the betrayal any less hurtful. I've been trying to figure out if I can forgive you, I said. If we can move past this and rebuild our relationship. Laura wiped a tear from her cheek. I want to try, she said. I love you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. Her words touched me, but I knew it wouldn't be that simple. It's not just about wanting to fix things, I said. It's about whether we can actually do it. Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight. It's going to take time, effort, and a lot of hard work. I know, she said, and I'm prepared for that. I've been thinking about seeing a therapist myself to understand why I did what I did and how I can be better. I appreciated her willingness to seek help, but I needed more time to decide. I need some space to figure things out, I said. I can't promise anything right now, but I'm not ready to give up entirely. Laura nodded, a small glimmer of hope in her eyes. I understand, she said. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, waiting, and ready to do whatever it takes. We sat in silence for a while longer, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. It was a bittersweet moment, filled with uncertainty but also a sliver of hope. As we said our goodbyes, I felt a sense of relief. The conversation had been hard, but it was a step toward clarity. Over the next few weeks, I focused on healing. I spent time with Josh and other friends, immersed myself in my photography, and continued my therapy sessions. I knew that whatever decision I made, it had to come from a place of understanding and acceptance, both of Laura and of myself. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had a sense of direction. I was ready to face the future, whatever it might hold. In the weeks that followed my conversation with Laura, I immersed myself in the process of healing and self-discovery. Each day was a small step forward, a piece of the puzzle falling into place. I continued my therapy sessions, which provided a safe space to explore my emotions and gain perspective on the situation. My therapist helped me see that healing wasn't just about moving past the pain, but also about understanding and growing from it. I spent more time with Josh, whose unwavering support was a constant source of strength. He suggested we take a weekend trip to the mountains, a chance to get away from everything and find some clarity. It sounded like exactly what I needed. So we packed up the car, loaded Max into the back seat, and headed out of the city. The mountains were breathtaking, a stark contrast to the urban landscape I had been consumed by. The crisp air, the rustling of leaves, and the distant call of birds provided a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. Josh and I hiked trails, talked about life, and shared moments of quiet reflection. Max, ever the adventurer, bounded ahead, his joy infectious. One evening, as we sat around a campfire, Josh turned to me with a serious expression. "Have you thought about what you want to do with Laura?" he asked, his tone gentle but probing. I stared into the flickering flames, contemplating his question. "I have," I said slowly. "I think I'm starting to understand that forgiveness isn't just about letting go of the past. It's about deciding what kind of future I want, and whether that future includes Laura or not." Josh nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "You don't have to make a decision right away. Take your time. It's your life, and you need to do what's best for you." His words resonated with me. I knew that rushing into a decision would only cause more harm. I needed to be sure of my feelings and intentions before making any commitments. Returning to the city, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I threw myself into my photography, capturing moments that spoke to the complexity and beauty of life. Each click of the shutter was a reminder that there was still so much to see, so much to experience, despite the pain I had endured. I also reconnected with old friends, people I had lost touch with over the years. They welcomed me back with open arms, their warmth and understanding providing a balm for my wounded heart. We spent evenings reminiscing about old times, laughing over shared memories, and creating new ones. Their presence reminded me that life was full of unexpected connections and opportunities for growth. Laura, true to her word, gave me the space I needed. She reached out occasionally, sending messages of support and updates about Max. Each message was a reminder of the bond we had shared and the possibility of rebuilding it, but I knew that I couldn't make a decision based on guilt or obligation. It had to come from a place of genuine desire and understanding. One afternoon, while I was sorting through some old photographs, I came across a picture of Laura and me from our trip to the Southwest. We were standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon, arms wrapped around each other, smiles wide and eyes filled with wonder. It was a moment of pure joy, a reminder of the love that had once been the foundation of our relationship. Seeing that photo sparked something in me. I realized that despite the pain and betrayal, there was still a part of me that loved Laura. But love alone wasn't enough. Trust, respect, and commitment were just as crucial, and those had been shattered. If we were to have any chance of rebuilding, it would require a monumental effort from both of us. I decided to reach out to Laura and propose a meeting, not to make any final decisions, but to talk openly about our future, to see if there was a path forward. When we met, the air was filled with a mix of tension and hope. We talked for hours, laying bare our fears, our regrets, and our hopes. Laura admitted that she had started seeing a therapist too, working through her own issues and trying to understand her actions. She expressed a genuine desire to make amends, to rebuild the trust she had broken. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, and it gave me a glimmer of hope. As we parted ways that evening, I felt a sense of cautious optimism. We had a long road ahead, filled with challenges and uncertainties, but I was willing to try. We agreed to take things slowly, to rebuild our relationship step by step, and to be honest with each other about our feelings and needs. The decision to move forward wasn't easy, and it wouldn't be without its struggles. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had a sense of direction, a glimmer of hope for the future. I was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the lessons I had learned and the strength I had found within myself. As Laura and I began the slow process of rebuilding our relationship, there were moments of hope and moments of doubt. We attended couples therapy, which helped us communicate more openly and honestly about our feelings and expectations. It was difficult, but each session brought us closer to understanding each other and ourselves. One day, during a therapy session, Laura revealed something that took me by surprise. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." I braced myself, unsure of what to expect. "What is it?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. Laura took a deep breath. "Before we met, I had a serious relationship with someone. His name was David. We were together for a few years, and it ended badly. He was my first love, and the breakup was devastating." I listened intently, wondering where this was leading. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked gently. She looked down, fidgeting with her hands. "David reached out to me recently, around the same time things started to go wrong between us. He wanted to reconnect, to see if we could be friends. I was feeling so lost and confused, and I let him back into my life, even though I knew it was a mistake." Her words hit me like a wave. I had been so focused on Sam that I hadn't considered there might be more to the story. Did you cheat with him too?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "No," she said quickly, "but his presence complicated everything. He stirred up old feelings and made me question everything. I didn't tell you because I was ashamed and scared of how you would react." The revelation added a new layer to our already complex situation. I could see the pain in Laura's eyes, the regret and confusion she had been carrying. It wasn't just about the affair with Sam. It was about unresolved issues from her past that had resurfaced at the worst possible time. Our therapist guided us through the discussion, helping us navigate the tangled emotions. It became clear that Laura's unresolved feelings for David had played a significant role in her actions. She had been seeking validation and comfort in all the wrong places, unable to confront the ghosts of her past. As I processed this new information, I felt a mix of empathy and frustration. Empathy for Laura, who had been struggling with her own demons, and frustration at the additional layer of betrayal. But it also made me realize that our problems were more complicated than I had initially thought. After the session, Laura and I took a long walk, talking about everything that had come to light. She apologized again, not just for the affair with Sam, but for hiding her past with David. "I should have been honest with you from the beginning," she said. "I'm so sorry." I squeezed her hand, feeling a mix of emotions. "We both have things we need to work through," I said. "It's not going to be easy, but if we're going to make this work, we need to be completely honest with each other." Laura nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes," she said. "I love you, and I want us to have a future together." In the weeks that followed, we continued to navigate the complexities of our relationship. There were days when the weight of everything felt overwhelming, but there were also moments of genuine connection and healing. We learned to communicate more openly, to share our fears and hopes without judgment. One evening, as we sat on the couch listening to one of my favorite vinyl records, Laura turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "I want to show you something," she said. She got up and retrieved a small, worn notebook from her bag. "This is my journal," she explained. "I've been writing in it since I started therapy. It's helped me understand myself better, and I want to share it with you." I took the journal, feeling the weight of her trust. As I read through her entries, I saw a side of Laura I hadn't fully understood before. Her struggles, her insecurities, her efforts to be a better person. It was a powerful reminder that we were both human, both flawed, and both capable of growth and change. Sharing her journal was a turning point for us. It helped bridge the gap that had formed between us, allowing us to see each other more clearly and compassionately. We weren't just rebuilding our relationship, we were also rebuilding ourselves. The unexpected twist of David's reappearance had added complexity to our journey, but it also forced us to confront deeper issues. It reminded us that healing is a multifaceted process, one that requires honesty, vulnerability, and a willingness to face the past. As we moved forward, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The road ahead would still be challenging, but I was more determined than ever to make it work. Laura and I had been through the fire, and now we were emerging stronger and more committed to each other. With Laura's journal as a guide, we embarked on a journey of healing and growth. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities for understanding and connection. We committed to being honest with each other, no matter how difficult the conversations might be. One of the first steps in our healing process was to address the unresolved issues with David. Laura reached out to him, not to rekindle their friendship, but to find closure. She explained to him that his reappearance had caused turmoil in her life, and that she needed to focus on her relationship with me. It was a difficult conversation, but it was necessary. Saying goodbye to David, even as a friend, was a crucial step for Laura in moving forward. We also set aside time each week to talk openly about our feelings and experiences. These honesty hours were sometimes painful, as we confronted the raw emotions and lingering doubts, but they were also incredibly cathartic. We learned to listen without interrupting, to validate each other's feelings, and to offer support without judgment. Max, our loyal dog, played a significant role in our healing journey. His unwavering love and boundless energy provided a sense of normalcy and comfort. We took long walks with him, often finding that the physical activity and time spent in nature helped clear our minds and open our hearts. Max's playful antics and unconditional love reminded us of the simple joys in life. In therapy, we continued to explore the deeper issues in our relationship. We worked on rebuilding trust, setting boundaries, and establishing healthier communication patterns. Our therapist introduced us to exercises that helped us reconnect emotionally and physically. One of the most impactful exercises was writing letters to each other, expressing our hopes, fears, and commitments for the future. Reading Laura's letter, filled with vulnerability and sincerity, brought me to tears. It was a powerful reminder of the love we shared and the potential for a stronger bond. As I delved deeper into my photography, I found new inspiration in our journey. I started a personal project, capturing moments of healing and resilience. Laura became my muse, and through my lens, I saw her strength and beauty in ways I hadn't noticed before. The project not only reignited my passion for photography, but also helped me process my emotions creatively. Our friends and family played an essential role in our recovery. Josh, in particular, remained a steadfast source of support. He and his partner organized small gatherings, bringing together friends who provided a sense of community and belonging. These gatherings were filled with laughter, shared stories, and moments of genuine connection. They reminded us that we weren't alone in our struggles and that we had a network of people who cared deeply about us. One evening, Laura and I sat on our balcony, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. "Do you think we can really make it?" she asked, her voice tinged with both hope and uncertainty. I took her hand, feeling the warmth and softness of her skin. "I believe we can," I said. "We've come this far, and we've learned so much about ourselves and each other. It won't be easy, but I think we're stronger now than we've ever been." Laura nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes," she said. "I want us to have a future together, a future built on trust and love." As we sat there, wrapped in the comforting silence of the night, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road to healing was long and winding, but it was also filled with moments of beauty and growth. We were learning to navigate the complexities of our relationship, one step at a time, with a renewed sense of commitment and hope. I knew there would still be challenges ahead, moments of doubt and pain, but I also knew that we had the strength to face them together. Our journey was far from over, but we were no longer defined by the mistakes of the past. Instead, we were focused on building a future filled with love, understanding, and mutual respect. As the stars began to dot the night sky, I felt a sense of gratitude wash over me, for the lessons learned, the support received, and the love that had endured despite everything. Our story was one of resilience and redemption, and I was hopeful that the best chapters were still to come. Months turned into seasons, and with each passing day, Laura and I continued to rebuild our relationship. The process was neither quick nor easy, but it was genuine and heartfelt. We learned to appreciate the small victories, the moments of connection that reminded us why we had fallen in love in the first place. One crisp autumn afternoon, we decided to take a trip to the place where it all began, the art gallery where we first met. The gallery had a new exhibit, and we thought it would be a fitting way to celebrate our journey. Walking through the familiar halls, hand in hand, we felt a sense of nostalgia and renewal. As we stood before a striking black-and-white photograph, similar to the one that had first captured our attention, Laura turned to me. "I'm glad we came here," she said softly. "It reminds me of how far we've come." I nodded, feeling a rush of emotions. "We've been through a lot," I replied, "but I'm grateful for every step. It's made us stronger." We continued to explore the gallery, each piece of art sparking conversation and reflection. It felt like a full-circle moment, a testament to our resilience and commitment to each other. As we left the gallery, we made our way to a nearby park, the same park where we had confronted our past months ago. Sitting on a bench, watching the leaves fall around us, we talked about our hopes and dreams for the future. We discussed the possibility of buying a house, the idea of expanding our family, and the adventures we still wanted to embark on. Each topic was filled with a sense of possibility and excitement. Laura looked at me, her eyes shining with determination. "I want us to keep growing," she said, "to keep discovering new things about each other and ourselves." "I want that too," I said, squeezing her hand. "I believe we can do it. We've already proven how strong we are." As we sat there, enveloped in the beauty of the moment, I felt a profound sense of peace. The scars of the past were still there, but they no longer defined us. Instead, they were reminders of the challenges we had overcome and the strength we had found within ourselves and each other. We stood up, ready to continue our walk, when Max bounded over to us, his tail wagging furiously. His presence was a reminder of the joy and unconditional love that had been a constant in our lives. We laughed, watching him chase after a falling leaf, his exuberance infectious. Walking hand in hand, with Max trotting beside us, I felt a sense of completeness I hadn't felt in a long time. Our journey had been difficult, filled with pain and uncertainty, but it had also been one of growth, healing, and rediscovery. We were not the same people we had been, but we were stronger, wiser, and more connected. As we headed home, I knew that our story was far from over. There would be new challenges and new triumphs, moments of doubt and moments of joy. But I was confident that we would face them together, with a renewed sense of love and commitment. In the end, it wasn't about forgetting the past, but about embracing the lessons it had taught us. It was about finding the courage to forgive, the strength to move forward, and the belief in a future filled with hope and possibility. As we walked into our apartment, I glanced at the stack of vinyl records, a symbol of the comfort and inspiration that had carried me through the darkest times. Laura noticed my gaze and smiled. "How about we listen to some music?" she suggested. I nodded, feeling a warmth spread through me. "I'd like that." As the familiar crackle of the vinyl filled the room and the music began to play, we danced together, lost in the melody and the moment. It was a dance of renewal, of love rediscovered, and of a future filled with endless possibilities. Our journey had been long and arduous, but it had brought us to a place of deeper understanding and connection. And as we moved to the rhythm of the music, I knew that we were ready to face whatever came next, together.